Here we're going to have a look at the greens they put in here. This is something they made a few years ago, and it's it's turned out really good. It really puts out the greens, and I'll just show you what and how it's made and what I've done. This is from a piece of timber to hold the plastic tight, so it's airtight, and the weight of the wood just stops the plastic from flapping and lifting off. So you just roll it back like that. If it's going to be a hot day, or with this hot day, just leave it roll back about there, so it doesn't get too hot. You'll notice that when I roll it back, the amount of moisture that's on the bottom of the plastic is stripping off it. That's the way I want it, to lift the humidity and the moisture in there. And I'll roll this other one back now. You'll notice at the back I've got pots. Some of them have just been freshly planted, they're not up yet. They are mostly seedlings that I really want and haven't got much of. I will take a green or two off them. Then, because they're in the pot, I'll plant the whole pot in the ground and don't pull the tuber out, so I don't disturb the roots. Once I've taken off one or two greens off it, if you disturb the roots, it doesn't seem to do any good or inclined to rot. If you just knock the pot out after you've taken the greens off and want to put it in the ground, take dig the hole, put the dirt in with the roots growing in it, and it just keeps going. So that's why the pots are at the back. The ones at the front here are tubers that I want to take greens off, and if you look down here closely, you can see here where I've cut it off. That particular one was cut off about 7 days ago, and you can see the regrowth since. It normally sends out 2, but this one, there's one there, it's going to send out 4. The growth rate in here is that shoot there, I will take that off about next Friday or Saturday, and it will be as high as this.
7 days.
In 7 days. It grows round about nearly 1 centimetre a day when they get to this stage, get growing. I expect that'll be up to there. A few important things with this: underneath these trays there's a mulchy dirt, like there's a rotted down pine bark. It's 150 mil or 6 inches deep, and it's wet, so that the moisture can continue. As you get heat from the top, you've got moisture and humidity that's driving the actual tubers in the actual growth. It's important to plant your tubers under the soil that you put in here, and don't leave them out of the soil. The growth rate by doing that is 3 times as quicker. For one green you'll get by leaving the head out, I will take 4 or 5 off at the same time. The ones left out of the ground, the head left out of the ground, I'll admit that the actual green is easier to take roots. You know, cutting is easy to do. It's harder than what the in texture than what these are. But in the same amount of time that you've got off a tuber, you're looking for multiple greens off of one tuber, and not just 1 or 2 for a length of time you've got them in there. So these are all planted just the heads just under the ground, and you can see where I've taken this one just above the ground, or I can just flick this one here. If I was to just flick that back there, I can see down to it. I can always still cut it just below the ground, and that will take it for a green. I've cut that below the ground because I wanted to get this node here. The ground level was there. Now there's the node, so I'm just going to cut that just below with a sharp knife. Make sure it's sharp, not blunt. You'll bruise it. Then I will simply just pare that off like that. And there's my green. Sometimes if it's too close, once here I'll take another one, I'll cut it here. Then in a minute I'll show you what I actually do to pot it up. Now as you can see, there's some longer ones and there's shorter ones, but that's just the one I just picked on. So I will take this now and we'll go and put it in a pot. Right, now we're on to greens that were taken in the autumn. These ones here, there wasn't many taken, were taken off side laterals in the autumn, put in here, and some were let to grow out for the winter, which was this one. Most of them were early enough and they died back and made little tubers, and they have reshot. If we look down in this pot, we see two little clumps here, and they're just reshooting now. And down here we have another one coming off those little clumps. These other pots here have little tubers in there. They're not much bigger than your thumbnail, but that's what comes off them. These were the early ones that died off and then have come up again. This one has been here for a while, and so are those. Now I'm going to be attacking these again to take off greens to plant in the ground. As you can see up here, I've come along and taken the centre out of it when it got up to that height to make it shoot out down lower. And as you can see, these laterals are starting to come. For me to cut them off again and put them in and pot them out, like we just said, we've shown you before. You'll notice here and here and down in here, if you can see that, where I've cut the top off, there's a lateral coming out there which is not quite ready to take yet, which I'll explain in a minute. Over here with more and more in here where I've taken them off. Now a side lateral is, as we'll see down here, which I'll tell you in a minute. If I shift that leaf out of the road, this is from the bottom up. Here's your top of your lateral. There's the node, first node, there's the second node. Now what I'm going to do, I'll cut this off here. And as you can see, the node there. This is fairly fine, this one. They'll be better when they're up further up. Don't take them in here with a piece of this, piece of the leaf, or the heel, because if you do, they'll grow roots, but they won't grow tubers, or they could be blind. You've got to come out one, and once again, cut it just below the node, trim it, and plant it the same as the others. To do it this way, you can capture a sport. If you've got a sport on your bush, which is a different flower to the rest of the bush, and it's out on a lateral that's came out, then you simply stop it and take these off the side, grow it like this. If this was a sport, all these shoots should capture the different coloured flower or the sport that you've got on your bush. And as you can see, that's the other side of it, is if you want to just use it to multiply your stock, this you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 8 from that, plus the one I took there. I can get 8 greens off it. So I've got 8 plants off just that one tube that I've kept. If I let that go higher, I could have possibly got more off there. But also I've still got tubers in the pot. Now we're in where I'll take the greens. This is the mix I use. It's a sand, it's a local sand that I've got. It's quite a good sand actually. And this lot, I used to mix 2 lots of sands together, but I find it's a bit coarse. So what I've been doing lately, I've got some perlite. We got it just here. I've mixed that with nearly 1/3 of that to 2/3 sand. That's my mix. Now I'll simply put it in the pot. As you can see here, this is a peat pot. The reason I use a peat pot is the roots will grow out straight through the side of it, and you just put it straight in the ground. You don't disturb the roots, they don't look back, and the peat pot will just dissolve away right away in the ground. So it saves a lot of work, but also it stops the actual green from setback or wilting when you plant it in the ground, because it's already grown in here. And it just takes off and keeps going. Now, moving too quick for the camera. Here I've got a liquid mix, and this is in here is powder. I prefer liquid or a gel, but at the present time I can't find a gel that is for soft cuttings. Now, all the gel that we have down here are for medium to hard. So I've just used powder or the liquid one, or don't use anything at all. I believe at this stage, I've got to do some experiment, but I think honey might be just as good as anything to dip your cuttings in. Supposed to pour that into there, and just simply just put the point of the cutting in there till it's moist. You can see that it'll drop on the bottom to shake it off, and with a stick just like that. Important, of course, to put your tag in there beside it, and that's your green taken off. Now here I have a watering can. I'll move this over a bit so you can see it. I also too like to see if this is closed up too much, where the little shoot is in the centre, and open it up, because often that'll stick with moisture, and of course it'll cause it to rot. That must have watered, so it goes right through to the bottom, and you'll see. See it coming here to the bottom. So it's wet right down under the cutting. There it is there. Also, some people like to place them in water, in a little shallow tray of water overnight or for an hour or two. The only problem I found with that is when you pull them out of there, the sand will run out the hole when you pull them out and you've got no sand left in your pot, so you can do it all again. So I found just wet it down, not really wet like that. Now over here, as you can see, this bench here is a heat bank actually. So the whole lot of it is I can turn it on. It's got wires under it, under the sand. I simply just don't use it because to draw them, I think I'm just wasting power. I tried it last year and I had better results without it. Because this is in a actual hothouse. It's got shake-offs on the top to stop direct light from the sun onto the actual plant, although it's going to be put in here. And it simply just dried out the sand too quick underneath, and I had to keep coming back and watering the plant. If it's turned off, it's enough temperature in here to fire them up, and I don't have to come back and water them. These trays, which I've made up myself, they are just, you buy from Woolies with a lid on them, you throw the lid away, and I just simply made, out of the lid, I made little round circles, put screws in them, and they can match the holes. So see if we can turn around, let the air in. But for the first week or so, until they all stand up, they're closed off, and I just simply gradually open up the holes. Some have got more holes than the others, and to let more air in as they get older. The reason I've done this is that most of the ones you can buy, there's a few around you can buy, but they are too shallow for dahlia cuttings. Dahlia cuttings will grow in there with even out roots. They'll keep coming, they'll grow up, and there's not enough air in the top, and they hit the top, because you get damp off and everything else on them, and they just rot out on it. The leaf goes black. So if we take that off there, these cuttings here were taken on Wednesday night. And as you can see, they're standing up and they're really taken off. So I'll just simply put that one in there beside him. And as you can see, these are still quite damp. They're still damp. They haven't really dried off anything at all since they've been put in here, because the sand underneath here is damp. It's quite damp. Once again, we're getting the moisture to come through with the warmth it's in here. Now I'll put this on top, back on top of there. Just make sure that seals off on the sand. Here's the first tray I took off, which is 3 days before. So I've just started actually doing the greens.
So that first tray off is 3 days old?
Yeah.
And this is 6 days old?
Yes. In probably one of my, this has got a plastic lid on it. So I've got one in here that I cut and left it in the, and I just left it behind, and I come around 2 days later and found it all wilting up. So I said if I can save it. It was completely limp when I put it in there, so I put it in an individual one and do this virtually the same thing and seal it off. That is starting to stand up already. So yeah, that's another way you can do it if you haven't got trays or tops like that. You can always use these. These are a bit dirty, but they've been used a few years now, and do them as individuals, and yeah, it has the same effect. Here the two side lateral greens I've taken off, and I'm just going to plant them in there. By the way, this is morning, fairly early in the morning. Take your greens off in the morning with low temperature, or when the temperature drops at evening. It stops the actual stress on the cutting. If it's too hot, they want to wilt too quick. So if you take them early in the morning or at evening, you'll have a lot better results.